I've worked in emergency medicine for over 15 years, and I've seen almost everything. Almost. But I still remember that night. The man who checked in for a fever and left without a name. It was late. Close to midnight, the kind of hour when the hospital feels hollow, when the hallways stretch too long and the fluorescent lights hum like tired insects fighting to stay awake. The air smelled of antiseptic and rain, that strange mix of sterile and sorrow that only hospitals seem to have. I was halfway through charting when I heard the stretcher wheels. They came rolling fast down the corridor. Squeaking with each turn, a paramedic pushed through the ER doors, soaked from the storm outside. On the stretcher lay an older man, gray beard, weathered face, clothes drenched to the bone. His skin was pale and glistening with sweat, his breathing ragged. "He's burning up," the paramedic said. "Temps at 103. Found him sitting at a bus stop, mumbling to himself. I asked, "Did he have any ID? A phone? Anything?" The paramedic shook his head. "Nothing. No wallet, no bag. Says his name's, well, actually he didn't say." They transferred him to a gurney and left him in my care. As I leaned over him to start the exam, his eyes opened, sharp, focused. Not the vacant stare of someone delirious. No, this man looked right through me, like he was assessing a threat. Then he spoke. "Don't call anyone." His voice was hoarse, steady, but there was something underneath it. Not fear, not confusion. Something heavier. Like a warning, I told him we needed to contact family, anyone who could help identify him. He just shook his head. "No one's looking for me," he whispered. Then, after a pause that felt too long, "Not anymore." That was the first moment something in my gut told me. This wasn't just a case of fever and confusion. We started the usual workup, labs, fluids, antibiotics, but even routine medicine felt strange with him. The way he watched every move, tracking the foreline, the needle, the monitor, like a man who'd seen these things before, in another place. Under different circumstances, his fever hit 103.4, yet he stayed conscious, alert. His pulse was strong, his breathing controlled. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't fading. He was waiting. "For what I didn't know? Can you tell me your name?" I asked. He turned his head slowly toward me. And then, almost like he was testing me, he said, "Names don't matter. They just make people find you." I tried to smile, thinking he was delirious. But his face didn't change. His eyes stayed fixed on mine, calm, cold. And in that silence, something in the room shifted. I realized he meant every word. Whatever he was running from, it was real, and it was close enough that even his name felt dangerous. By morning, the fever had broken. His temperature was down. But his mind seemed sharper than ever. When I walked into his room, he was already sitting upright, legs over the side of the bed, scanning the room like a soldier checking for exits. He'd unplugged his for himself cleanly without bleeding. No panic. Just quiet control. I brought him breakfast, a small tray, oatmeal, and orange juice. He didn't touch it. "Sir," I said carefully, "I need to fill out your chart. What should I call you?" He didn't look at me at first. He just stared at the blank wall, as if watching something I couldn't see. Then he spoke, low and deliberate. "Doc, you ever wake up one day and realize your whole life was built on a lie?" The words hung there, heavy, uncomfortably intimate. I froze. I didn't know what to say. I've heard confessions in this job. Pain, regret, last words. But this sounded different. Like the start of something darker. He turned his head then, finally meeting my eyes. There was a faint smile on his lips, but his gaze was empty. Completely empty. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Didn't think so." Over the next few hours, something changed. The fever faded from his face, and the wild, distant look in his eyes softened, but only just. He spoke clearly now, politely, measured, like every word had been filtered before leaving his mouth. We talked about simple things at first, how he felt if he needed water, whether he could eat. He answered all of that icily, even with a trace of humor. But whenever I tried to steer the conversation somewhere personal, where he lived, what he did for work, if anyone might be worried about him, it was like hitting a wall. His expression shut down. His eyes turned cold. And he'd say in that calm, distant tone, "Doesn't matter, Doc. Some things are better forgotten." I thought maybe he was just being stubborn. But the truth was, it wasn't defiance. It was fear. A quiet, buried kind of fear that I recognized all too well in trauma patients. When the nurse came in to draw a second round of labs, everything shifted again. She rolled up his sleeve, tied the tourniquet, routine procedure. But as soon as the needle came close, his whole body tensed. Then, faster than I could process it, his hand shot out. Grabbing her wrist with startling strength, the tray clattered to the floor. The nurse froze. And so did he. His eyes went wide, breathing quickened, pupils sharp as a blade. For a second, he wasn't in that hospital anymore. He was somewhere else. Somewhere far darker. Then he blinked, and the tension broke. He released her hand immediately, backing away, eyes full of regret. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Reflex. He sat there shaking, staring at his own hands as if he didn't recognize them. That's when I knew. It wasn't fever confusion. It wasn't paranoia. This was trauma. Deep, carved into the bone trauma. Maybe military. Maybe law enforcement. Someone who'd seen too much and never really came back. Later that night, I sat at my desk, reviewing his chart and lab results. Everything was mostly normal now. But something in me didn't feel right, so I pulled back his gown a little to check his skin for rash or marks, and that's when I saw them. Scars. Old ones. Faded but unmistakable. One across the shoulder, clean, surgical. Another along the ribs, jagged, rough, like shrapnel. And a deep one near the abdomen that could only come from a bullet. Then, just above his collarbone, a tattoo. An eagle wings spread wide, clutching a dagger in its talons. Below it, the letters ODA, Operational Detachment Alpha, Special Forces. Green berets. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Suddenly, the strange calm, the precision, the eyes always scanning exits. It all made sense. Whoever he was, this man wasn't just lost. He was trained to be lost. Later that night, when the ward was quiet and the monitors beeped like soft metronomes, he called out to me. "Doc," he said, "can I ask you something?" I turned from my desk. Sure, he was staring out the window, the storm outside painting shifting shadows on his face. "If you had to disappear, how would you do it?" I blinked. "Disappear?" He nodded slightly. "Start over. Erase everything. Walk away from who you were." I thought he was joking, so I said, "Well, I'd probably start by not checking into a hospital." He actually smiled a small, tired grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "Guess I messed that up." Then he looked back at the rain, voice soft but heavy. "Sometimes you run so far from the past, you start running from yourself too." I didn't have an answer for that. And maybe that's why the silence that followed felt so heavy. Because deep down, I knew he wasn't talking hypothetically. A few hours later, I checked the security feed from the main hallway, and that's when I saw him again. He wasn't in bed. He was standing just beyond the nurse's station, near the waiting area. A family sat there, a woman in her 40s, a teenage boy beside her, both tired but smiling faintly as they waited. The man was watching them, not in a creepy way, in a yearning way. Like he was seeing ghosts. He didn't approach, didn't speak. He just stood there quietly, hands at his sides, eyes full of something I couldn't name. And for a brief moment, he smiled. It wasn't joy. It was heartbreak disguised as peace. Then he turned away and walked back toward his room. By sunrise, the fever was gone. And when I came to check on him, he was already sitting up. Fully dressed in the same wet clothes from before, now dry and neatly folded. His color was back, his posture steady. He looked ready, like a soldier waiting for the next order. I walked in holding his discharge papers. But before I could speak, he said, "I won't be needing those." He stood, slow and deliberate, testing his balance. Then he looked at me. Double quotes. "Doc, you've been kind. That's rare these days." "Listen," I told him, "I can't let you go without ID or a contact." He cut me off gently. "I'm not anyone's problem anymore." Then he reached into his pocket and pulled something out. A small silver tag, metal worn smooth from years of wear. A dog tag. I took it in my hand and my stomach twisted when I saw it. The name had been scratched off. Every letter carved out with the edge of a knife. "Burn that," he said. And before I could reply, before I could even reach for the call button, he turned, walked out of the ward, and vanished down the hallway. Security tried to find him. Every hallway, every exit, every camera angle. We checked the footage frame by frame. He was there one moment, walking toward the elevator and then gone. No door opened. No alarm triggered. No sign of him anywhere. It was impossible. Hospitals are built like cages. There's no way out without being seen. But somehow he slipped through every lens, every hallway, every trace of record. It was like he never existed. No admission form. No ID, no fingerprint record. Just a bed that still smelled faintly of rain, and the echo of his voice saying, "Don't call anyone." 2 days later, something arrived at the hospital's front desk. A small envelope, no return address. Just my name, written neatly in black ink. The paper was rough. The edges slightly burnt, as if it had been folded and refolded many times. Inside, there was a photograph. Grainy, old. A man in uniform, green beret, full gear, kneeling beside a little boy. Both smiling, and behind them, blurred by sunlight, stood a woman. She wasn't posing. She was looking at them, smiling softly, like she was memorizing that moment forever. I flipped the photo over, and there it was. A short note written in the same black ink. "You were right, Doc. I shouldn't have checked in. But for one night, it felt good to stop running. Thank you, Jay." I must have read it 100 times. Every word felt heavier the more I looked at it. Then it hit me. The woman in the background. I knew that face. She was the same woman from the waiting area that night. The one he had watched silently from down the hall, and the boy beside her. He was older now, maybe 17 or 18 when I saw him, but it was him. Same eyes, same faint smile. That wasn't just any family. That was his family. The woman and boy he didn't approach. The life he couldn't return to. The ghosts he came to see one last time. I sat there in the break room, the photo trembling in my hands, listening to the hum of the vending machine and the distant rhythm of heart monitors. It all felt smaller, somehow quieter. In this job, people come and go every day. Some you save. Some you don't, but once in a while someone passes through your hands and leaves a mark you can't explain. And that night, I realized maybe he didn't disappear. Maybe he just stopped running. Sometimes when I'm on a night shift, and the rain starts tapping against the ER windows again, think about him. The man who came in with a fever and left without a name. And I can't help wondering, was he ever really lost? Or had he finally found a way to let go? Maybe that's what we're all doing, in our own ways. Running from something we can't quite name. The memories, the guilt, the faces that still visit us in the dark. But that man. Whoever Jay really was, he taught me something I can't forget. Sometimes disappearing isn't about hiding. It's about finding peace where no one can follow. So tell me, if you were him, would you have stayed to face your past, or walked away to finally be free? Let me know in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. For more stories that don't just end, they linger.